Firefighters in the western United States are struggling to contain wildfires that have already killed at least 19 people. Roughly 100 fires are burning in California, Washington, and Oregon. Hundreds of thousands of people have evacuated their homes. The fires have already destroyed thousands of structures, and many more are threatened. Officials say the death toll will continue to rise as rescuers search through the rubble. Oregon's governor says smoke is making the state's air quality the worst in the world. But she says changing weather may offer some help. Danya Bacchus reports.
More than 1 million acres in the West, ravaged and scorched. So far in a fire season that is not even half over, and taking a tragic toll, the magnitude of which is still unknown.
There are early reports from our state police that there are dozens of missing persons related to the fires.
Oregon's Governor Kate Brown is pointing to the towns called Talent and Phoenix, where searchers are looking for the missing. Smoke from Oregon's 3 major fires is unimaginably widespread. Its worst air quality in the world is choking the Pacific coastline, Seattle's skyline to the north, San Francisco more than 800 miles to the south, and then to Los Angeles. The scenes and sickening air underscore for many that the climate is in crisis. Washington's Governor Jay Inslee.
I think we have to start thinking there are more climate fires because that's what creates the conditions that makes them so explosive.
This is a climate damn emergency. This is real. And it's happening. This is the perfect storm.
California's Governor Gavin Newsom toured destruction north of Sacramento, where more than 250,000 acres burned in a national forest.
The reality here is the mega fires that we're experiencing come from these mega droughts that we've experienced.
People who did make it out have harrowing stories to tell.
8 of us had to go down to the end of our road, go into the sand and get down in the water to avoid the fire.
Denise Hendrickson left her home in Lake Orville, California, an area now prone to fires.
I've survived 4 different fires up there until this one, and now I don't even know if my home is standing at this point.
But this man's house is gone again, 2 years after fire claimed his home in a community nearby.
It hurts more this time, I think, than last time, and getting things back together again and having to rebuild is rather devastating.
While there is relief expected with rain in the northwest tomorrow night, there really is no end in sight.
People tweet the photographs of what San Francisco looked like yesterday and say, oh, 2020, could you get any worse? As if once we're in 2021, these kinds of disasters are going to stop happening.
Climate scientists point to human behavior, namely burning of fossil fuels, including coal and oil, for increased temperatures that decimate forests and make them prone to burn. Oregon officials are now saying they are preparing for a mass fatality incident, saying there is a possibility that they will not have enough resources to handle the dead.
I now want to bring in Jeff Berardelli to talk about the forecast, particularly regarding these wildfires. Jeff, what do the wind patterns tell you about where the smoke is going to go next?
So the wind patterns will be changing. The breeze is going to pick up later tomorrow and as we head into Monday as well, and that'll push the smoke in a different direction. But take a look at this insane picture from up in space as we look down. This is what it would look like if you were in a spaceship kind of hovering above our atmosphere. Unbelievable. Look at all this smoke along the West Coast, some of it actually heading east towards Texas. The rest of it wrapping around a huge area of low pressure right here in the Pacific Ocean. And that is going to be moving eastward, which, again, Danya mentioned, could bring a little bit of rain, especially starting on Sunday night and Monday, and then more so as we head into the week. But you can see these wind currents focusing the smoke into the Pacific Ocean. That is all going to change. So watch where the smoke is right now. Some of it's headed towards the west. Some of it's just kind of stagnant along the coast. But as we get a little bit, a couple of days in advance here, and the wind starts to switch because of that storm, notice everything starts moving northward. So it'll alleviate some of the smoky conditions in Southern California. But it's also going to transport some of this smoke up into the northern tier of states as well. So that's what we're looking at in terms of smoke. Things will start to get a little bit better in places like San Francisco, but not so great in Oregon and Washington, just simply because there's a lot of fires to their south, and with winds blowing from the south to the north, it will blow the smoke up in that direction.
And so what does the forecast look like in the fire region over the next few days? Jeff, will the area be getting any rain?
So it does look like we're going to get a little bit of rain, but it's going to take a couple of days for that to get in there. And some folks will not see the rain, and you'll see what I mean in just a second or two. So in the meantime, this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon, temperatures are warm, conditions are dry, so not great conditions, but not horrible conditions with a major heat wave like we saw just about a week ago. So that's good news. As we head towards the west, here comes a storm. It's good news and bad news. The good news is, yes, here comes some sprinkles, a little bit of rain, not too much. But the bad news is the wind picks up. It'll start to get breezy, which is going to make it harder to control some of those fires. Now, along the immediate coast, they're going to get a good dose of rain. Some heavy rain possible from Northern California along the coast of Oregon and Washington. But notice inland where some of these fires are burning, it stays dry. So it's a good news, bad news scenario when it comes to the weather over the next few days.
Still, it's more good news than I feel like you've been able to give our viewers over the last couple of days.
That's true.
One last question for you, Jeff. We heard California Governor Gavin Newsom talking about how these fires are linked to climate change. To anybody out there who still doubts that or thinks that those remarks are political, what do you have to say?
Well, I mean, is it a coincidence that Australia had its worst fire season just 6-8 months ago, and now we're seeing that exact same thing happen in California? The trends are all pointing upward gradually over the past, few decades or so. All the worst fire seasons have happened recently. But with that said, it would be disingenuous to not say that, yeah, this has something to do with, the human error or intentional human folly, if you will. There's some of that. Because fires just don't start, that it just doesn't self-combust. There has to be an ignition. And in the middle of August, most of that was lightning. So there is some of that, right? There's also brush lying around that could be cleaned up. There's some of that. But the research shows that a lot of this trend is due to long-term drying. And in the particular case of this year, it's short-term drying as well. The long-term drying, the long-term heating is due to climate change. In the short term, we have a major drought going on across a lot of the West. But we also have one of the worst droughts that we've had in the past 1,200 years. We've proven that through scientific research. And in the long term, look at how much the West is warming. All those red counties, all these red states, that's where it's warming the fastest, and that happens to be in the West. That means it's also drying the fastest. As you add more warmth, more heat energy, you evaporate more of the moisture. You end up with a moisture deficit, and research shows that moisture deficit explains just about all of the extra burned acreage that we've seen. Take a look at the trend. In yellow, that's the acreage burned each and every year. Not much in the 1980s, couple of years in the 90s where there was a little bit more, but you can clearly see this trend upward. Look at 2020. Right now, we're at least 4.5 million acres burned. The most before that was 3.5 million acres, and we're only halfway through the season. Look at the average temperature. It's gone up in the West about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, some places 3 or 4 degrees. So there's obviously a trend going on, and it is, in fact, climate change. So let's show you what has changed. California fire season is now 2 to 3 months longer than it was back in the 1970s. Area burned has increased by 5 times, and 17 of the 20 largest wildfires have burned since 2000. And this season alone, 5 of the top 10 fires in the history of California are burning right now as we speak, and 3 of the top 4 fires, including the biggest fire ever in California history, is burning right now.
Very concerning. All right, Jeff Berardelli, thank you.
You're welcome.